Somewhere underneath the floorboard I will sweep my garden. Underneath the cupboard lives a mouse, and he discovered there was nothing there. Nothing there to discover.
It's a term that most people have heard before. Conservation. By definition, conservation is the use of natural resources in a way that assures their continuing availability to future generations, or the intelligent use of natural resources for long-term benefits. But what does that mean for us? Natural resources are materials found in nature. We use them in our everyday lives for food, shelter, and entertainment. Natural resources give us the water we drink, the houses we live in, the vehicles we drive, the clothing we wear, and the air we breathe. Without some of Earth's natural resources, we could not be alive. Some natural resources are non-renewable. There are finite, limited amounts of things like fossil fuels. These resources take millions of years to form, so when we extinguish Earth's supply, we will not be able to create or recover any more. Other natural resources are renewable. These materials can be replenished, but still must be used in a sustainable way. Sustainability can involve recycling and reusing to help curb demand, reducing pollution, or saving energy, like turning off lights, limiting heat and AC levels, unplugging devices when they're not in use, etc. One of my favorite expressions of a sustainable lifestyle involves upcycling old materials to create something even better.
Back on your own now. The world is alive now, in and outside. You run through the forest, set a beat for us all.
Now, if you take a quick walk through your kitchen, you're probably going to find a lot of the following items.
It's harmonic connection in stereo symbiosis. These Legoland empires choking out mine. Now you're everywhere, everywhere, multiplying around me, child. A strain on my heart, this rock can't tolerate anymore.
So, what did they all have in common? They are all derived from the same type of natural resource, trees. Whether from the wood, the fruit, or any other part of the original plant, none of them would exist without the trees that their materials came from. Trees give us all of these products and more. Trees and other plants put oxygen in the air. Trees throughout coniferous forests, temperate forests, tropical rainforests, and around the world help produce hundreds of millions of metric tons of oxygen every year. This is the same oxygen that we breathe. It is also the same oxygen that helps limit the threat of a strong UV radiation from the sun. Trees create natural shade. Trees perform biological processes like transpiration that keep them naturally cool despite the heat of the sun. Land shaded by trees is then much cooler than land shaded by man-made structures like roofs. Large enough trees can significantly reduce heating and cooling expenses for property owners. Trees help prevent droughts and floods. Trees and other plants intercept precipitation and can act as natural buffers, interrupting the flow of direct runoff and limiting nearby erosion. Trees create habitats. Trees provide humans with beautiful natural views. Trees also provide habitats for other living beings that live in and around them. Sometimes specific critters and specific trees even depend on each other through different types of symbiotic relationships. For example, the great green macaw of Costa Rica depends on almond trees for food. Unfortunately, almond trees were targeted specifically for logging, and the great green macaw grew greatly endangered as a result. Fortunately, the more almond trees that regrow through the area, the less endangered the great green macaw becomes. So this shows how important trees really are, socially, economically, just in every way for humans and for other parts of our world. So all of life in our world is interconnected in different ways, especially by way of the food web. So we have different producers like trees and grasses and all sorts of plants. And this is the main level of food. This is where it all starts. And from here we have different creatures that might eat the grasses and eat the producers. So there's hummingbirds that will find nectar in plants such as like what you see below with the heliconia. And then there are cows that might eat the grasses. Humans sometimes even eat plants. But then there's also the next level up, where sometimes you'll see the humans that eat the cows, or maybe even a cat once in a while, or the caimans that might eat a cat, or something like that. And it just is all interconnected in this way. So if we were to remove even one thing from this web, the whole web would be falling apart. So if we were to take out, for instance, the grass, that directly could affect the cow, it could directly affect the butterfly, it could directly affect the mouse, it could even, then that could directly affect humans and whatnot, or indirectly in that sense. And everyone will eventually be affected by just this one little piece that is removed or injured on the web. And so that's why it's very important to remember that all of this life is connected in this way. The living creatures in our global food web play different roles depending on their dietary choices. As mentioned earlier, plants begin the food cycle. Plants take in energy from the sun and create their own food, sugars or carbohydrates, through a process called photosynthesis. Then, some of the animals eat the producers. These are primary consumers. When an animal eats a primary consumer, it is then considered a secondary consumer, and when an animal eats a secondary consumer, it is considered a tertiary consumer. Now, remember, the energy that begins with the sun is used to make the original food energy in the plant. As this energy travels through the different levels, producer to primary to secondary, and etc., the percentage of the original harvested energy greatly decreases. In fact, a maximum of only 10% of the energy from each level will transfer to the next one. The lower or closer to the beginning that a being eats on the food chain, the greater the biomass and the most efficient the consumption is in terms of energy. When people eat higher on the food chain, for example, eating the meat of an alligator that ate a fish, and birds that ate insects, that ate plants, the less efficient this is in terms of energy. The sun gives off infrared radiation that passes through Earth's atmosphere. This is necessary for life as we know it to exist on our planet. When the radiation reflects to escape Earth, greenhouse gases, known parts of our atmosphere, like carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, methane, and water vapor, work similarly to the glass panels in a greenhouse, trapping the radiation on Earth. This is called the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect is necessary, to an extent. Levels of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide go through cyclic levels and phases naturally. Recently, though, increases in greenhouse gases have been abnormally significant. This could lead to changes in the global climate of the Earth, or global climate change. So we know that we need to keep our environment healthy in order to just live in it happily, but as we live in our environment, we're going to also damage it in some ways naturally, just as social beings that we are. And we also know that we want to survive economically and that we need to prosper from our environment in some ways, but we want to do this without hurting it all at the same time. So we have to find this balance. And in order to find this balance, we're going to have to look at both the environment, how we function socially, and how we function economically, and just try to see if there's a place in the middle where we can have a sustainable world.